understand one of the big drivers to the cloud for a lot of organizations is competition, the need to keep up with competitors or get ahead. I'm from US Citizenship and Immigration Services, so that's not a big factor for us. Or at least I thought so, and then it hit me, isn't this what all large organizations do? They think there's no competition, you know, you're a big company, you own your market, and you think everything's fine, and then all of a sudden there's a nimble, small startup that's disruptive, and it all goes away. And I was watching the presentations this morning, and all of a sudden it hit me. Singapore. They are doing some amazing things there. I'm tempted to move myself. So I'm not going to talk about, it's great, I love it. I'm not going to talk about competition. What I want to talk about is innovation and speed. Innovation's an interesting one because a lot of people, for some reason, seem to think that it's difficult to innovate in the federal government. A lot of people think that it's difficult to change things in the federal government. Actually, I disagree, and I'm going to explain why. Before I can do that, though, we have to talk a little bit about speed. So when I talk about speed in the government context, what I'm really thinking of is the time from when we realize that we have a mission need to the time when we deploy a capability to meet that mission need, right? This is sort of lead time in the lean concept. How long is that time? Realize a mission need, deploy a capability. And obviously, we want that to be as short as possible, right? I don't think anybody would disagree with me on that. So in the federal government, we have our way of making sure we get very quickly from one of those to the next. And the way that it works is, I'll describe the typical process. We realize that we have a mission need, and the first thing that we do is we wait. We wait until we can assemble a whole bunch of mission needs and put them all together and call it a program. So there's a little bit of wait time built in there. Then the next step is that we practice something that we call acquisition oversight. What is acquisition oversight? From my experience, basically what that means is that we write about 105 long documents that nobody ever reads, and we put them in a filing cabinet. Now, why do we do that? We do that because it's so risky. Now that we have a big program with lots of requirements, it's really risky, and so we have to exercise some oversight over it, right? It's going to cost a lot of money by this point, especially after we've written the 105 documents and we've already sunk a whole bunch of money into it. So we get a go-ahead, and then once we get the go-ahead, we move at the blazing speed of procurement. We procure hardware, we procure services to install the hardware in a data center, we procure development services, let's say, and after GAO resolves all of the protests, then we get our hardware, and somebody installs it in the data center, and then this is where we're really moving fast. The programmers start programming, they put together a whole bunch of stuff, we test it, we go through a security accreditation process that takes a while, and then we practice something that we call change control or configuration control or something, again, to mitigate the risk that we might actually use the things that we've spent all this time creating. So when you add all of that up, the time to go from that recognized mission need to the deployed capability, it's on the order of years to decades, actually, and I mean that literally, that's not a joke. We have programs where we start the program finishes, let's say, 10 years later, and that means some of the requirements have been sitting there since the very beginning. They've been sitting there for at least 12 years. I don't think that's acceptable, and I think there is very much a different way of doing it. So imagine now that instead of going through that process, we create a continuous delivery system that deploys systems out into the public cloud. So the way this works is we take one requirement or a very small batch of requirements, and we have a number of agile teams under contract. They develop the code that will meet those requirements. As soon as they check in the code A continuous integration system takes over, builds all of their code, runs automated tests against the code. When it passes the tests, automated deployment scripts stand up, provision a new environment in the public cloud for it, deploy the code, and it's in production. The cycle time then is shrunk down to almost nothing, but the important thing is that we can take just a very small set of requirements, in other words, a very low risk, and get the result all the way to production. So we have less need for all of the oversight and all of the other mechanics because the risk is so small. So this is what we've done at US Citizenship and Immigration Services. We have one program that now regularly deploys multiple times per day. We have other programs that deploy 1 or 2 times a week. They run through this sort of continuous integration pipeline. We think they're rather secure. We do, every time we build the system, every time we run our automated tests, we're running tests for security, we're running static code analysis, and then we're running analysis of the binaries. And if we discover a vulnerability in production, we can patch it really quickly. We can tear down VMs and stand up new ones so we don't have to worry about fixing any problems that might have occurred. So it's a really powerful model. Coming back to innovation, the reason I say that innovation is much easier than people think in the government is that if you ask around, if you talk to government people, you'll find that they have a lot of great ideas, actually. In fact, every time I think I've thought of a brilliant new idea, it turns out that lots of people have thought of it before, and they haven't done anything about it. They haven't done anything about it because they don't feel empowered to do anything. Because if they have an idea, what they're going to have to do is turn it into a program and write 105 documents that get locked away, and the whole routine. So the way to encourage innovation, the way to create a culture of innovation, I think, is to make it very inexpensive and very low risk for experiments to happen. And then you have the additional step maybe of convincing people that that's actually the case. But by using the public cloud and by setting up these sorts of continuous delivery systems, what we can do is make the cost of an experiment so small. You know, you have a good idea, we stand up a VM, try it. We don't put it through a lot of process steps because the continuous integration pipeline is already there. Just stick it into the pipeline, it'll get deployed. We have FedRAMP accreditation and pre-accredited cloud provider. And so we can inherit controls from that. We can create identity management systems and other things that account for a lot of controls that we can reuse for each thing we do. So most of the security structure is already in place, so why not try experiments? If we stand up a VM, you try something and it doesn't work, we can tear the VM down, and we've spent almost nothing on it. So by reducing the risk and reducing the cost of trying experiments and convincing people that they should try experiments. Failure is okay as long as you do it the right way, as long as you do it quickly and without it costing virtually anything. People start to release all these creative ideas, you know, the innovative ideas that have been sitting in their heads already. And that's what we've been doing at USCIS. We've been trying to build this culture of innovation. And I hear new ideas coming from my staff all the time now. You know, here's a way we could improve this process. Here's something that we could try that will simplify how we do change control, X, Y, Z. And it suddenly hit me that, you know, all of that was just waiting there to be released. By setting up this super fast pipeline that takes us from concept to production, what we can essentially do is move things at the speed of thought. As soon as somebody has an idea, we can try it out. And that makes all the difference, I think, in encouraging innovation. Thank you.